It's an interesting what you said, because the funny part is that we are absolutely fine as a society showing extreme violence in a U certificate in the most gory of details. So if you watch a Singham or a Rowdy Rathore, you will see bones being broken in the most graphic fashion, and we are fine letting our kids see that. And nudity, even as an adult, you're not allowed to watch. And even words like shit get bleeped out if you watch it on Star Movies or whatever it is. And the funny part is, you would hope every child will hopefully at some point in time see some nudity in his life. You really hope and pray for that guy that he does. And you also hope that he never sees any violence in his life. But we show the kids violence, but we never show sex. And forget sex, we never show nudity. And again, is that just hypocrisy? Is there something we should do about it as a society? What?
It's a tough one here, because I mean, and I don't know whether I should answer that without humor for a change, but I mean, I think it begins very quickly. If you do examine what the kids go through, and most kids watch what? Cartoons? Have you seen the amount of violence in cartoons? Everybody's getting squished and squashed and falls 100 feet, and buses running over these cartoons and they get up again. There's an enormous amount of violence in cartoons. So somehow, obviously that's acceptable, and kids grow up thinking, that's okay. And of course, I mean, as you mentioned in movies these days in India, I mean, you have a few, say, shit. It's not a terrible word. I mean, it might not smell too good. So you have somebody gun 10 people down, bang, 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 and they're all like bleeding all over the place, and there's blood coming all over the place, and then some guy turns around and says, oh shit, that they'll bleep out. It just sounds ridiculous. So I don't know where this is coming from, frankly. I think there's a lot of policing in anticipation. What's the word here? Presumptive policing. Where, of course, our city is one of the #1 recipients of this attitude, where we want to look after you better, we want you to be safe, we want your protection, so you must be home by 6 p.m. Okay, 11:30, but you know what I mean. So it's all for you, and we don't want your minds corrupted, we don't want your children corrupted, we don't, so we have decided, we meaning 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people in the committee, that we must not have such scenes in movies, or such words should be bleeped out. It just is not taking wider opinion into account. I mean, I do realize that we're still a youngish country, 60 odd years old. And one other example that I give in defense, for instance, not defense, in explanation of why sometimes such decisions are taken, is the whole lottery system. Now that was prevalent, if you remember, in India for quite a few years. I don't know whether you guys used to buy lottery tickets or not. I didn't have money to buy one in the past, but yeah, 50 paisa, 1 rupee, stuff like that, 2 rupees. And there used to be lotteries of every state, MP, UP, this, that, and the other, offering you 1 lakh, 2 lakhs, 10 lakhs, and whatever it was then, crore. And people used to buy these tickets, and the government has since banned lottery ticket buying, right? Except one of those Bhutan or whatever it is. Am I correct? Anybody? Yeah, anybody buys lottery tickets yet? No, it's not available. And the government, whoever they are, this group of people decided that, there's so much poverty still in India, and there's so many people who are still so poor in India, that by selling lottery tickets, the state might be making some money. But if a poor laborer, because who wants to buy a lottery ticket most times? Those who really want to up their situation in life. Like, I've got absolutely nothing, but if I buy a 2 rupee lottery ticket, maybe I'll get 5 lakhs, and then maybe my whole life will change. Somebody who already has 5 lakhs or whatever says, hell with the lottery ticket. Hey, without, the lottery tickets are. So the government then, or the people in power, decided that if a laborer or somebody really poor, whatever, who was being paid poorly, the underprivileged, go around buying these lottery tickets instead of providing for their family, they said, let us not have lotteries in India, because if there are too many people who are likely to suffer.
But we have ND Tiwari. We have ND Tiwari, we have those guys who were caught in the Karnataka assembly, who were watching some stuff on the thing which is actually not legally allowed. So I love our politicians, they're fantastic. I think we shouldn't blame them for everything. They're role models in some ways. Guru, what do you think?
Yeah, so my lottery story ends by the
I think we could do with a lot more politicians with scandals of that kind. Because we're so tired of listening to how much money they have made off us. and where all it is parked in the Swiss banks. I'll go to Switzerland and do something more interesting for a change.
Yeah.
We need, but the problem with the Indian politicians, unfortunately, is most of them are 80 plus. Beyond a point, even Viagra can't help. So,
Yes.
where is the option?
Nobody from Pfizer here, I hope, who can rebut that. So, Nandini?
Yeah, I have a perspective on this as well. I think if you watch, the Tudors, or if you watch Game of Thrones or this part,
Think you could ever watch Game of Thrones in India
no way.
without censorship?
Well,
Do you really
I
think?
don't think so. But here's what I want to say. If you look at it as recent as that, as what is the date of Tudors and Game of Thrones, it is more with the onslaught of the British and the foreign rule, and their game was, fear psychosis and how they must make these people, subjugate them to a supremacy of kind. So they did very different out there, and that's how their times also changed. From what the Romans practiced to what modern England did in the 1940s or 1920s, or even what Henry VIII did.
They changed.
And no, they didn't change. I mean, they made it worse. And what has happened is our system of aping them, and we're always 50 years behind them, we are now aping their Middle Ages. Whilst we are barely getting over that whole complex they put in us. They did that in Africa, they did that in, a lot of the ethnic nations. And I think, left to ourselves, we had the best, the wives who were dancing. Up to the Mughals, we had the most amazing homes. I mean, the very famous houses of pleasure. And even China had it, even Japan had it, even today, I mean,
and
probably
now-
Japanese are the one country that is
Oh, that's
legalized.
amazing. That's
Yeah.
true, and now we are a country who have mannequins banned in Mumbai.
exactly.
So, yeah.
So I think, though in India, so we decided we won't talk about it, prostitution has been legalized in most places. And you can't have an establishment and you can't do it in public. But we are one of the most progressive nations versus that, And I think it is more, it was, and I know from the partition time, the way North India changed, maybe South didn't change that much. But the Parda system that came with the Mughals and that went on to the British brought about all this hypocrisy. Pre-Mughal, we weren't a hypocritical nation. We had the, Amrapalis, and we had the Devdasis, and we had a very permissible social life in the temples, in the villages. Even today, the lack of body consciousness is more in the rural India than in urban India. I mean, it is a very distinct division.
So next holiday, Gurpreet,
Into the villages, right?
in the tribal areas.
No, but do you all agree with me? I mean, this is a kind of a...
The surprising fact is that we're discussing kids here. How many of us are willing to discuss nudity as, adults first? So the violence and nudity running parallelly for kids first both need to be completely not divulged to kids at all. I personally feel I've worked for a kids channel, and it is sad that from the beginning you're teaching the kid how to fight evil with good through violence. So the minute you are violent, you are getting your justice. So this is something which really...
You know the kind of cartoons, so there's a traditional growing up passage of rights kind of a thing where the father has to discuss with his son the birds and the bees, etc. So this father walks into a room and says, "Son, I think it's time we have this conversation about sex." So the son's on his laptop, looks at his dad and says, "Yeah, sure, Dad." Turns his chair around and says, "What do you want to know?" I mean, come on, it's the age of YouTube, it's the age of, everything and anything is up there. What censorship, where, what are we trying to control? In fact, I think control is a pretty dirty word, and probably it's high time we started kind of talking about it more openly even with kids.
Sorry, there's another unrelated control story, and I think it's a very important one to add to what you said.
It's not about the lottery.
Okay. Slightly different.
Yeah.
So this, control is so important because once again, people are deciding for you what is good for you. This whole presumptive kind of, ban. And well, we used to climb quite a bit, mountaineering and stuff, friends of ours. And in the 70s, up to even the 80s, and of course, after the 90s, stopped climbing. But contour maps of our own Himalaya in India were not available, were banned, were just impossible to get. So a lot of the climbing was either done on site or by other people's accounts or stories, or if we were lucky enough and we had friends who were coming in from overseas, as a lot of people did, overseas climbers, had any contour map of any part of the Indian Himalaya that you could possibly want. But in India, the Survey of India said no Indian citizen or nowhere in India should a Survey of India contour map of the mountains be available, because God knows, everybody is a spy or everybody wants to care. What was the problem? Because obviously, in other countries overseas that climbed, all these maps were available. And of course, later, satellite technology came, say in the 90s, and people now, for instance, you can go on the computer and check anything to any level of any contour of any mountain, but the government still doesn't give survey maps, saying no, it's against defense, whatever laws or what. It's just, how cretinous can a group of people be and yet run our country? It's just, the mind boggles here.
That's fine, we elect them, so blame goes here as well.